Today is Tuesday, December 12th. What to know about dramatic fights playing out in courts around the country over abortion bans. Also, why countries are divided at the end of the UN's climate summit. And the status of a national electric vehicle charging network that was promised 2 years ago. Plus, a verdict in one of Google's big monopoly trials. A growing problem women athletes have been facing behind the scenes. And which movie is leading the way in the first big award show nominations of the season? Those stories and more news to know today, next. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. Once again, multiple state Supreme Courts are weighing controversial cases about abortion. The most high-profile one has been playing out in Texas. It involves the first woman in the U.S. to ask a court for permission to get an abortion. She is more than 20 weeks pregnant, but her fetus is not likely to survive. And her doctors have said continuing the pregnancy would jeopardize her health and ability to ever have more children. So she sued over the ban, and her case has been going back and forth in the courts for a week now. The state's attorney general has been arguing that if the woman's actual life was threatened, emergency rooms would not keep sending her home. And in the Texas law, there is no exception for the health of the fetus. So the AG sent hospitals letters warning of legal consequences if they allowed her doctor to provide the procedure. Then yesterday, the Texas Supreme Court issued a final decision, siding with the AG, saying the woman would not be able to get an abortion there. Well, she ended up leaving the state anyway to get an emergency abortion elsewhere. After this lawsuit first came out, a pregnant woman in Kentucky also asked a court to allow an abortion, but there hasn't been a ruling yet in that case. Also later today, Arizona's Supreme Court is set to discuss two conflicting state abortion laws on the books to decide which should be in effect or if they should be combined. Nearby, New Mexico's Supreme Court is also weighing an abortion case to decide whether some local governments can ban the procedure even though the state does not. And finally, there's a case in Wyoming. Under the state's constitution, people have the right to make their own healthcare decisions, and a judge will have to decide whether abortion qualifies. But first, the state Supreme Court will decide whether to allow Republican state lawmakers and an anti-abortion group to intervene in the case. Of course, all of this is happening because of the U.S. Supreme Court's decision last summer to let the states make their own abortion laws. More legal challenges are expected and will likely continue for a while. A military watchdog has finally wrapped up its investigation into what's been called one of the most damaging intelligence leaks in years. Remember, over the summer, a member of the Massachusetts Air National Guard was arrested for posting sensitive, highly classified information on social media. And this week, the Air Force Inspector General reported people in his unit did not do enough to stop him when they found out he was taking notes and searching for classified material, over fears they thought security officials might overreact. So the Air Force has now disciplined 15 military personnel, and some have been removed from their positions. This investigation was separate from the Justice Department's criminal case, which is still happening. With that, the airman is pleading not guilty, but he's still in custody, and at this point, no trial date has been set. The United Nations Climate Conference was supposed to wrap up this morning, but it seems to be going long, since countries are at odds over what's supposed to be the big agreement to come out of it. COP28 organizers released a working draft yesterday that cut a call to phase out fossil fuels. Some top oil production nations wanted that mention dropped, saying it puts their people's prosperity at risk. And the new version just says cutting back on fossil fuel production and consumption is just one way to combat climate change, but not mandatory. But many experts disagree, saying oil, gas, and coal have no room in a climate-friendly future. Former American Vice President and current climate advocate Al Gore responded, saying the summit, quote, is now on the verge of complete failure. Some island nations have called the agreement a death warrant, and other delegates have been protesting. Another draft is expected to come out soon. The United States is one step closer to having a real network of electric vehicle charging stations, just as promised more than 2 years ago. The bipartisan infrastructure law allocated $5 billion for all 50 states to deploy fast chargers near federal highways. But only about half of states have made any effort to spend their share of the money so far. The states furthest along, with firm contracts in place, are Hawaii and Ohio. And Ohio actually just opened one. It's up, running, and government funded. Still, it could be a while before the rest of the network is set up. It already took more than a year to come up with standards for consistent plug types, charging speeds, and so on. Now, some of the sites that states have chosen require new transformers or switchers, and local construction permitting can take up to a year. But President Biden has said the goal is to have EVs make up half of all new cars sold by the end of this decade. And if that's going to happen, the Energy Department says more than 1 million public charging stations will be needed. So far, there are just about 158,000 public chargers available. By the way, the Biden administration is still handing out other money from the bipartisan infrastructure law. For example, the government recently pledged more than $6 billion in funding for high-speed rail and $2 billion for other rail projects. The White House is calling it the largest investment in passenger rail since the creation of Amtrak more than 50 years ago. Among the projects that got grant funding, a rail service to go between Las Vegas and Los Angeles in 2 hours, and a system to connect LA and San Francisco in less than 3 hours. That second one has a lot of critics already, though, since it's been over budget and behind schedule for years now. But the hope is more federal cash will start to speed things along. More news is still coming up, but first, a quick break for our sponsor. I'm sure you've heard of the benefits of stretching, so I'm here to tell you about a device that I found makes my stretching more effective and its benefits much more pronounced. Even after the first time I used the Castle Flex, I could tell a difference. And the more I use it, the better my body feels. My husband and I both have dealt with back issues, so we've needed something to really work. And the Castle Flex has helped so much. Think of this device as WD-40 for achy bones and tight muscles. Plus, it's the same price as just 1 or 2 massages or chiro sessions, and yet it can be used daily for years. And right now, they're allowing returns even after the holidays until January 15th, so you can gift it without worrying about return deadlines. Though really, they have a less than 1% return rate anyway, so you and your loved ones will want to hang on to it. Oh, and we have a code for our community right now to get a discount. So take advantage by going to castleflex.com, that's flex with 2 X's, and use our code NEWS12 for 10% off. CastleFlex, F-L-E-X-X, castleflex.com with the code NEWS12. Now back to the news. A jury has now agreed with the video game maker behind Fortnite in its lawsuit against Google. It's now been 3 years since Epic Games first sued both Apple and Google, the 2 tech giants behind the world's biggest app stores. You might remember this started back in 2020, and that's when Epic Games updated Fortnite with options for players to buy virtual items directly from Epic, avoiding Apple and Google's 30% cut for in-app purchases. Well, in response, they both kicked Epic off their stores. And because of that, Epic Games took them to court, claiming the 2 tech giants ran illegal app store monopolies. Flash forward to this week, and the jury actually agreed with Epic on every question it was asked to consider, at least in the case against Google. It found that Google owning both the Google Play App Store and Google Play billing service constitutes as monopoly power, that Google did anti-competitive things in those markets, and that Epic was harmed by that behavior. Epic did not seek damages. Instead, it said it just wanted Google to make the Android ecosystem more open and competitive. So a judge still has to decide what changes Google will have to make. Either way, it's a historic victory, and a surprising one, since Epic mostly lost its fight against Apple. This one ended up being different in a few ways. For starters, since Apple makes its own smartphones, it didn't have to cut deals with other companies. And those kinds of deals were a big focus of the Google trial. Still, Google says it plans to appeal, pointing out that it's only been following Apple's lead to stay in line with the rest of the market. Google is also still facing other legal challenges to its dominance over search and its ad tech business. So stay tuned. Soccer's world governing body is now not only overseeing what happens on the field, but also online, too. And what it's found hasn't been good. FIFA put out a report this week that shows players at the Women's World Cup this past summer were nearly 30% more likely to receive online abuse than players at last year's men's tournament. It analyzed more than 5 million posts and comments across several platforms, and more than 400,000 ended up getting reported and hidden. FIFA says targeted, discriminatory, abusive, or threatening posts and comments were directed at 1 in 5 players. And the most common target was Team USA by a lot. The American team received more than twice as many abusive posts than anyone else. Now FIFA says it's going to keep up this kind of monitoring so online abuse and hate speech does not keep circulating. It's calling on social media platforms to strengthen their moderation policies too. Hollywood awards season is just around the corner. And with that, it looks like a familiar showdown could be reignited. We're talking about Barbenheimer. Yep, when the comedy Barbie and drama Oppenheimer came out on the same day over the summer, they both ended up being big hits. And this week, when the Golden Globes announced the nominees for its 2024 show, it was confirmed Barbie and Oppenheimer will be going head-to-head in many key races, including Best Director. Overall, Barbie is nominated for 9 Golden Globes, the second most in Globes history. Oppenheimer is nominated for 8. In the television categories, Succession leads the way with 9 nods. The Golden Globes are set for January 7th. We'll find out who will host the ceremony and who will win Lifetime Achievement Awards in the coming weeks. Then, before you know it will be time for the Oscar nominations. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Trivia Tuesday, when we ask a different trivia question every week. But first, thanks to our sponsor, Copilot. The new year is coming up, but you do not have to wait to start making your health a priority, because Copilot makes it so easy. The app gives you a real-life fitness coach who will customize workouts for you and your individual needs and goals. No fitness fads here that will just fade out by February either, because you're set up for success with a personalized plan that your coach can adapt for you as needed. And yet it's actually still affordable. My experience has been really, really impressive. My coach Megan has created this perfect workout plan for my busy lifestyle that I can do anywhere on my own time. And she has been so supportive, cheering me on, holding me accountable, and still being understanding if I miss a workout. I'd love for you to follow my lead to get fit and feel fabulous. Give Copilot a try to find out why it was listed by Forbes as the top-rated personal trainer app of 2023. Head to go.mycopilot.com/newsworthy to get a 14-day free trial and 20% off your first month of personalized fitness with your own personal trainer if you sign up before February 1st, 2024. That's go.mycopilot.com/newsworthy to get a free 14 days trial and 20% off your first month. Sign up for the new year and let Copilot help you reach your fitness goals. Okay, now back to Trivia Tuesday. Today's trivia question is, what country has the youngest population? You can play along with us in our weekly roundup email that comes out each Friday. Simply sign up to get it at thenewsworthy.com/email or find the link in today's episode notes. As for last week's trivia question, how fast was the first person to get a speeding ticket going? The answer is 8 miles an hour. And that was actually 4 times the speed limit. It was 1896 when Walter Arnold drove through an English village at what was considered racing pace, in what was basically a car, but at the time was called a horseless carriage. Arnold ended up being caught by a police officer who chased him for 5 miles on a bicycle. And in the end, the offense cost him the equivalent of around $330 in today's money. But it kind of worked out for him. Walter Arnold was one of the earliest car dealers in the UK, and it's believed the publicity around his speeding violation helped his business. Plus, the speed limit ended up getting raised later that year to 14 miles an hour. All right, thank you so much for listening and for sharing the show. We'll be back with another news roundup tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.